I really encourage you all to really test the assumptions that you already have about what this industry could look like, should look like. I don't like the word should. I try to get rid of that out of my lexicon, but really think about what your preconceived notions are. Several years ago, the conversation was about the black market versus the legal market. This was the topic of conversation 10 years ago, right? More recently, it's been about hemp versus cannabis. We got to get people out of hemp and into medical and adult use. I'm saying get rid of these prior assumptions. What we really want to talk about, and what you're going to find today, is we're going to talk about safe access to products, tested products, and legal cannabinoids. That's the market for cannabinoids, whether we want to call it hemp, whether we want to call it cannabis, it's the same thing, right? So that's what you're going to find. And the last thing I want to say is that you're going to hear some views that you probably don't agree with. There's some people in this audience, some of these participants, who truly believe that this should run on beer rails, right? There's other people who think that that's the last thing that it should be done. There's some people think that we should be prioritizing medical patients first, and I hear that. There's other people who say, let's be realistic with the fact that consumers are already self-medicating. Let's make sure they get safe products. So we're all trying to figure out what does good look like. That's why we're here.
My name is AnnaRae Grabstein. I am your moderator today. What we're going to talk about is assuming that you have earned the privilege of getting to day one in market. What does winning look like?
The adage of failure to plan is planning to fail, that's really true in this space. And it does depend on the channel that you're working with. So, for us, we come from the alcohol background. We have 10 years of experience in the hard cider business. Our model is working through beer wholesalers, and that's our standard business. What we have to do going into a market is we can't go and hand deliver and hand sell every single case. It's simply not possible. That's why we have the beer wholesaler partners that we have. But what we have to do then is we have to lay out what is the plan to be successful. So in that 30 days, identify, work with your distributor partner. Say, where are the 25 or 50 accounts that we really need to be in? Let's get into those accounts. Let's make sure they're merchandised. Let's make sure you have tasting support and samplings. And then, at 30 days, check in. How did it go? What accounts are working well? What accounts aren't working well? What are the learnings from the market? Do the same thing at 60, do the same thing at 90. And it's really about, making sure that you learn and adapt to that individual market, that individual wholesalers, those key retailers as you're going into a new space, so that when you come out of that 90-day plan, you and your distributor are fully aligned on what your success is going to be for the next year. Right? And as you get into being, multi-year partnerships with wholesalers, you start to get into annual brand planning, right? And so you can look at that data from those early successes, in the last 12 months and say, okay, what did we do in the last year? Here's how we're going to plan this out and be successful in the future. But it really is about making sure the plan is in place, it's well communicated, it's well financed, and that it's realistic. Don't expect to tell your distributor, well, you're a large Molson Coors or AB wholesaler, so I'm going to send you a full truckload of product and I expect it to be gone in 2 weeks. Like, that's not realistic for most products and brands.
Alexi, I want to put you on the spot here to help the audience think about how you show up with the right resource allocation, given things like team, budget, technology, how you really figure out what you need in order to pull it off.
The way that I think about it, for a company, you have to kind of understand, where are you in the journey? It's a little bit like you're playing a poker game, I guess is the way I'll put it today, is what's your chip stack? What are your skills? What are your capabilities? What are you strong at? Who are the other people who are at the table? And then how do you think about that dynamic to really go and launch? So company stage is one that I think about. To get specific about resources, I think about, it's not the resources that you have, but it's what roles do you need? How are you going to get it into retail? How are you going to work with the sales team? How is it going to show up? How is it going to be merchandised? That's to getting it on the shelf. But then how do you get it off the shelf? How are consumers going to pick your product relative to the category? And the category shows up differently in different types of stores. Different stores show up differently depending on the market. So there's no market that's the same. So that's another trick to the equation. You could have 20, you could have a 100 pilot launch, you could have a 5-store pilot launch, you could have a 1-store pilot launch. And so really just breaking it down into what are the discrete actions? What did you learn? And do you want to replicate that, or what do you want to do differently?
So for every state that we have launched, actually, and now on the hemp side, we're in about 6 states. So to begin with, we hire at least one body in the market to begin with. Ideally, someone like Jason was saying, someone that has 10, 15 different years of experience in the beverage world. I myself make sure that I'm there at every market launch. I think just showing up makes a big difference. I was on a trip just last month in Ohio, in North Carolina, in Georgia, and I was asking the distributors how many brands they're carrying. Usually it was, I don't know, between, let's say, 10 to 20 different brands. And I asked how many actually have a body in the market. And the answer was 1 or 2 or max 3. Of telling the distributor that you're there for them, holding their hand, making sure that they know the story, that they know your products, that they've tried your products, and then working with them. I think like both of them said, the products aren't going to sell themselves.
If you're the first THC brand to launch with a distributor, nobody could tell you what it's like to be a THC brand with that distributor. So if you're the 10th, there's a lot of people you can ask. And so it's, but if you're the 10th in 10 weeks, there's not really much of a sample size, right? So like, if you have a distributor that launches 1 brand every week for 10 weeks, you don't know. So you just have to be prepared for that.
We actually ran out of inventory in the month of June. You can get away with that one time, and I guess it's a good problem to have when you have a lot of demand. But I think we learned our lesson, made sure that we had a backup manufacturer, that we were never going to run out of inventory either on the cans or the shots that we sell.
Theo, can you share with us what kind of data is available and how you might use it?
None of the big data providers like Nielsen, ComScore, anyone else has come out with reliable national level data or even state level data. Hopefully they will in the coming months or within the next year. Time will tell. In terms of how we're accessing our data right now, there's really kind of 3 main buckets or channels that we're accessing it from right now. One are the distributors. The second are the brands. You're talking to 3 of them right now. And the last are the retailers. I'll give you an example. We just launched Connecticut over the last couple weeks. I think there's only 1 distributor or maybe 2 distributors in the entire state. So it was easy for us to speak with the distributor, to understand how many stores they're selling in, to understand how many licenses there are or how many of the wine and liquor stores have actually obtained licenses so far, to understand what kind of volumes they've done throughout the last year and what they project over the next quarter, over the next year. We can then verify some of that data with the brands themselves. I think in the state of Connecticut, there are only 5, 6, 7 different brands, so it's easy to pick up the phone and kind of verify that data. And then on the retail side, as I mentioned, just boots on the ground, myself in the market.
Jason, let's talk about activating in market, merchandising, collateral, swag, even advertising. What does it look like for you in Trail Magic when you guys activate in a new market?
As we've talked about earlier, like getting your product on shelf is kind of the easy step, right? So it's about velocity. It's about, introducing folks to your brand. It's about telling your story, getting liquid to lips. And, for us as a company, well, we have some investments in point of sale and signage and, shelf talkers and case stackers, and those are important. Overwhelmingly, the majority of our investment goes into tastings. At the end of the day, we believe that flavor wins, and consumers are going to choose the products that they enjoy drinking.
Because we're so early in the category, I think it's easy to forget that what we're all doing as we're building is we're really educating. It's about educating consumers. It's about educating retail. It's about educating the wholesale partners. A mistake that we've made is just underestimating the cost of education.
I think education right now is probably the most critical thing for all of us and for this category to succeed. I know we're all here talking about hemp beverages and cannabis beverages, and it feels familiar to us right now. But
for us, one that speaks to something that Jason was talking about earlier, which is around quality accounts, really choosing where you want to be and where you show up. The way that we look at that is, I think, high 80s to low 90s in terms of account retention. It could be great to say, hey, I opened up 500 accounts in 2 months or whatever it is, but if you churn 50% of those, then I'd rather not have 500 accounts be the goal.
To Alexi's point, I'm happy to be in 25 really high velocity accounts rather than 200 slow moving ones.